Hey guys, work diary number one, state secrets 3. So what I'm basically doing at the moment is I'm going to be working on a process of putting out state secrets 3. Oh, well, you'll find out when we find out. But the basic idea is as I'm working this and with my website and with Deadline, we're going to start to work into this little pattern where I'm making little video clips that I feed and give you guys little updates, and at the same time, I'm going to be, writing stuff and material about research on my Facebook page. And the idea is that, and it's not going to happen instantaneously, but the idea is that you treat my Facebook page as like, oh, Ben's got his work diary open and you can have a look and, screw the spelling. I really don't care. It's just me sharing my thoughts and you're getting to see my work process as I unfold. And it's quite good too, because I see this is a sneaky way to kind of like put little comments out, and people might throw me links or point me things I hadn't thought about, and I might not, I might reject it, as I quite often do. But it's good to have that little kind of thousand mind principle kind of going on. Just trying to, I haven't got my glasses on today. I haven't actually done. I probably should have done this anyway. So that's the plan, and then of course we'll be putting stuff up on the website and the paper, which is all looking fantastic, and that's going to come along and slowly kind of get all the sort of marketing machine built behind, basically some of the books ready that we can get out a fair quality of material out there. I am going to be looking at doing it in print, and I think the main reason why I want to do it in print initially anyway it's simply the plagiarism factor. It's like so many times I've seen I put stuff out there and then people cut and paste and they put up there and they put little twigs and they really actually, it's not just the copying of mine, it's their little whatever their ideology or that they put onto it. So then you become a weapon to stab something else, and I'm like, nah, I'm not having this shit, guys. This is what I do. We're gonna have a little bit of control over it. As I said, feel free to pull for my work diaries, but that's what we're gonna do. Enough. Okay, so basically, what I'm gonna do is I'm breaking it into 10 kind of loose chapters, which are going to unfold with the idea that we start off with a definition of terrorism. I'm going to do this by kind of walking you through what I learnt when I was at Christchurch University, referring to the previous state secrets, show you what I was up to in the army, and walking you through New Zealand cases. And this will be also a very good way, as I mentioned, sort of from the Maori Wars up to, well, dickhead shooter, showing you not only the different kinds of variations of terrorism you encounter, but also some of the names that will apply in the story down the road. One of the examples, for example, is we're going to be talking about Scales Limited. Now, Scales Limited is a subsidiary of South Canterbury Finance. Very, very interesting company. They actually began as the special operations arm for the merchant navy when New Zealand was actually shipping weapons to the Russians as part of this convoy to help support, and they were using. I think, and this is what we have to look at, and everyone, I'll be asking stuff, and you might be able to help me, but I think they actually, the weapons that they were providing were actually farm stock, weapons that we used to hunt in bits and pieces. So one of the things I'm also, immediately being very interested about was, what exactly are they going to be doing with the gun buybacks? Because when you go and start to look through the history of what I'm going to show you, we've got a pretty good history of being actually good little arms traffickers and actually fueling all of these wars that we've been involved in, which is again part of the geopolitical process of showing you, where we are and who we're tied into and what our qualifications are. So again, we've got some very interesting Christchurch companies to show you along the way, which will introduce you to some of these people early in the history. From obviously mentioning what terrorism is, we'll get into the issue of target acquired. Target acquired is going to be introducing you to the geopolitics unfolding in New Zealand at that time and around the world, visitations, things, people coming here, events unfolding, which all build the stage towards why we ended up in this event. And again, my intention is I'm not writing this to say this is who Brenton Tarrant is, or this is what's really happening, like da 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 da. I'm going to try and approach. I think by the end of reading the book, you still have lots of questions about who he, what's going on before. I'm not really attempting to do so much a who done it, or at least that's the goal. What I'm really seeking to do is unflesh the political background of events unfolding, so that we can see through the eyes of this event all these other events that, in some ways, this has acted as a distraction too. For example, the 1080. I mean, again, when I walk you through what was going on 1080 with the media campaigns, for example, saying, oh, 1080 people will use, try to use baby, put 1080 in baby infant. Well, I'll walk you through the media complaints process, show you how the fact that they actually kept on repeating this lie, when in actual fact we already had a person convicted from the pesticide industry. We'll be looking at the changes to the laws that were slowly creating things like Department of Doc, even the fire department, friends, to become, and the police, to become increasingly geared towards this paramilitary status, which again fits in with things that were unfolding around the world. And at the same time, Nikki Hager is very much untalked about inquiry in Afghanistan. So we'll look at that aspect of it. Part of this target acquire process, maybe early chapter 2, is that we'll also be looking at probably, in fact, very much leading in the background of this, is this build-up of the events in the Balkans and the utilisation of militia forces as proxy forces to fight other campaigns. And this includes Islamic forces, and it includes right-wing forces, and it includes fundamentally looking at the networks of people and how New Zealand tied into these things to supporting these basically state-sanctioned terrorism. And that, again, I think will be, in some ways, one of the things I'll kind of point to is it doesn't necessarily matter if someone's got a gun at Brenton Tarrant and done MK Ultra, and he's, he is still some product, even if he is, some little loser, poor little boy who gets himself fantasy games and gets sucked into things. He's still a byproduct of state terrorism in a way, which is what I'll introduce you through to. By these arms pipelines that we're actually heavily involved in. And they also tie very much into the history of things like the Australian Security Intelligence Service, the relationship between right-wing hate groups with these intelligence services, and how such much of this, the denial of, like, oh, we had no idea that they were there, or we weren't, it's the reason why they weren't looking, as I show, is because they had a very fucking crazy relationship with these organisations. And we need to address these issues, and both with the right-wing and the Islamic issues, is pointing out the fact that these guys haven't really been anti-terrorists. These guys, actually, the state has been the terrorist, and created either, more, whether it's organic or it's direct, it doesn't matter. They've created situations which have allowed this destabilising event to occur, and this is what this thing has huge destabilisation consequences to New Zealand. As again, whether he was directly pulled the trigger isn't going to be the point, because there are jackals out there who have seen this as a buzzword which will come up again and again: crisis of opportunity. So whether they've seized on the moment to push forward their agendas, and this is all these things that will unfold. So, in the target acquired aspect of it, we look at why we became, in the words of John Batista, such a juicy target, that, and in some of the other events that unfolded that were also juicy targets as part of this. The intention is also to take what's happening in New Zealand out from a singularization, like, oh my God, we could do, and look at it in point of view, saying, look guys, they're not just doing this to us, this is part of a much wider network. And again, it doesn't matter whether people directly doing it, it's these dominoes effect, which again, by doing this, then they're able to push this, take advantage of that opportunity to paint this particular way, so it's even magnified more, or it's focused on that. So that's what we'll be kind of walking you through this process. This is kind of a holistic approach through the whole tier approach. So from the target acquired, we're going to be going into the background of Brenton Tarrant, and at this stage, that's actually proving to be, I guess, the hardest thing, and that's kind of in some ways when I really did go to look at Brenton Tarrant as far as I could push, I became aware of this, and I've seen it in other cases as well, which in some ways it's the dog that doesn't bark, and it's the area that you need to focus on. We're talking 2016 to 2018 where Brenton Tarrant was. There's a huge gap in 2010 to 2016 where he is just not there. Some of my forward chapters kind of paint the kind of, well, where can we deduce he was? If we don't have him physically, what do we have those other players doing? What were they actually up to? Can they give us clues that will lead us towards Brenton Tarrant? And from that we will we'll also flush into things like the Australian Seven and the National Front and the groups which he's been said to work with, who again things like when we look at National Front, like, well, yes, there is this very interesting underground right wing, and I really fully believe it, and I wouldn't say I've been open with doors open, but they've come knocking at my door. Totally accept that. I put that up on Facebook page again, which is part of the importance of running an open workshop. It's much as much about protection for me as anything else. But while I can take you down these roads into areas in some very dark places in Christchurch, what I can also turn around and do is show you how those doors then open into some very respectable offices as well. So again, that's one of these things which some of the parties that are trying to, oh, this is the right-wing terrorism, oh, this over here. So, well, that's very cool. You go and have a look at your boss, because from your boss, guys like Humphrey Rollison was the shareholder for the Christchurch Press. When you read through the Christchurch Press and you had when I was growing up in it, it always had a particular editorial policy towards issues of intelligence and Christchurch is the place of Christ College, as I show you through some of these companies of these very respectful people belonging to some very disrespectful organisations. Humphrey Rollison ran the Christchurch Press. He was also a director in a company called S&M Andrews. Stephen Andrews was an old boy from Christ College, tied up with the whole spooky dooky wookie stuff happening in Vietnam and Indonesia in the 1970s era America. Again, a lot of these characters are from real kind of era America, dun 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 dun, movie stuff. You'll find these names actually have some very surprising Christchurch connections and Timaru connections to people like Humphrey Rollison and Alan Hubbard. Now, I've again written about these guys, but it's to put it in context of this, and it's again this issue of things like Gun City, and this will come up again and again. So, yep, wrote about that. So, a lot of this stuff, I wouldn't say it's quite I told you, but it's like, you know what? They can't say, because, I have thrown the shit at them, as I will throw you all the way through the different samples, the different documentaries, the different sources I've been utilising. I've clobbered these guys over the head for 20 fucking years on the subject, and they go, no, that doesn't go on, that doesn't happen. Well, it does fucking show on. So they've got an issue, you got an issue immediately, and I will tell you for a fact, when it comes to Christchurch and terrorism, there isn't a single person on this planet that knows more about which fucking rocks to look under than anybody else on that planet, and that is a fact. And if they don't want to recognise that, well, that's cool because they're lying, but I will challenge anybody to turn around and find out anything I tell you cannot be documented or hasn't been documented, and that I don't have a very solid track record. Case in point, when we talk about, South Canterbury Finance, Alan Hubbard, second book, there's an entire chapter devoted to that house of fucking snakes. And it was, and I'll walk you through that, some of the stuff in there as well, like people like Proc Bank, they were actually working Russian mafia at the same time. Mr. Apples, they were, taken to the Privy Council, sued for money laundering. You had the head of previous gangs and intelligence working out of that building. You had dodgy Russian boats. It's a whole chapter, and a lot of these guys have very much a link into this whole white supremacist backdrop story and some of the dodgy, dirty deals that we're doing, and have these links into some of these guys, the National Front and so on that we're talking about. For example, guys like Minerva, that's another company Stephen S.M. Andrews run. Well, Minerva was basically staffed by Rhodesian SAS at the time of the whole apartheid area. So we've got this whole thing that I can show you in Christchurch of how New Zealand and Christchurch and people within New Zealand were playing a huge part in supporting the apartheid, and a lot of these guys were tapped in part of that whole mercenary fucking network, which then went on to be part of the whole Iran-Contra affair. So, we were tapping into those roots early on. So we didn't do anything a lot about this stuff because it was convenient to have a few thugs down the road. As again, we'll unfold you the culture of what Christchurch is in a town which I grew up. I know that town like the back of my palm, and I know both sides of it. In fact, I'll mention very briefly. Basically, I went to my father in my early teens. I went to Heaton Intermediate, which is not too far from where the janitor, the camouflage, got arrested. My family imported ski equipment, so we got to meet a lot of the people that were involved, had the money because skiing was expensive. We stayed in their lodges and da-da-da-da. I went to school at Boys High. I had friends in Christ College. I went to university at Canterbury University. I walked past the Al-Noor Mosque. I walked past South Canterbury Finance. This was my street. And as a writer, this is where I wrote State Secrets and got to know, went to the company's office there and found out who was doing what and which particular were the property developers. And I worked out of Tim Barnett's office writing State Secrets. He allowed me to use his phone, so I had an idea about the political connections, and I had people. So I'm going to be your tour guide into the crime scene, and I'm going to give you my perspective of that, and I'm going to walk you through these events, and I'm going to flush out the witnesses that we spoke to that will show you that this was a real event. We will then go and examine the equipment used to show you that, well, the reason why there were so many issues going on with the visuals was because of the software, and we'll walk and then we'll flush that actually out. And what I'm hoping to do is get people to sort of go, guys, stop latching onto things. At the end of the day, what I'm hoping to do is, I have studied counter-terrorism for 20 years. I've worked around guns. I know these streets. I want to walk you through this like an old-fashioned copper, not play anything, and just have you walk it through the common sense. And I'm not trying to pull any tricks. If you walk through it slowly, okay, when we're using the camera, there are these, the visuals and stuff of the shooting. The issue when you're looking at a crime is that's the weapon, guys. So before we even get carried away with all the other stuff, we need to understand about how that weapon works. And this is what I'll do. I'll walk you through a time frame by time, phase by phase aspect of it, to give you my aspect about what happened on the day. And that's what I'm attempting to do. Okay, and what we can know from the established facts. There's plenty that we won't know. There's plenty of leads to follow up. But some of the shit that out there is just bonkers. And frankly, I'm kind of fucked off about it because, and I've even lost friends about this. And I'm very sad about it. But, people actually got hurt there. And I don't care that they're Islamic. They were my neighbours in my country, and it doesn't happen. So I'm going to try and give, I'm going to try and give the same protection to the people at the mosque as I'm going to try and give to the dickhead white supremacists who've got themselves embroiled into this, that actually are just collateral damage. And you may think, what? Stand up for white supremacists? I'm not doing standing up for anyone. I'm doing my fucking job. Pardon my swearing. You cannot do counter-terrorism if you're going to have a bias. You cannot do any reporting. And I do see this as a counter-terrorism exercise. Love, again, we want to get esoterical, a little bit, philosophical. Love's the only thing that's going to actually heal the situation. And that means, and again, this is part of, Flush should actually point out further, what I actually basically mean is that if you want to solve terrorism, you're going to understand terrorism. And if people conduct terrorist attacks, you've got to understand what their motives were. And again, going back to this, whether he was a muppet or, had chips on his shoulder, the conditions that evolved, he's not the cause, he's the symptom. And the same thing with these people who are running around that are tied up with the right wing and the hate situation, they're the symptom. We need to understand what's going on in Christchurch that allows people to be this so angry, so pissed off, that they feel that hate is the answer. And tell you what, as again I hope to unfold, the solution to fighting terrorism is not more guns, it is not more laws, it is not more the right, just the feeling that let's hate the white supremacists. Well, we did that for 15 years with the Islamic community. Where did that get us? You kind of get my point? As soon as you hate or try and put something in a box or put it in a cell, you're just creating a meaner dog. And again, these are some of the things which relate to the gang issues, which again, you're talking this, white supremacists is an international, the tied into an international cartel. Like, duh? Really? Maybe that's our problem, which again, I point in State Secrets. In 1999, I wrote State Secrets. I was told by, and again, trying a journalist, an honest journalist, that says, oh yes, we knew about organised crime in the 1990s. No, we did not. No, we did not, because I was the thing I was hammering over the head. Oh no, there's no organised crime. Oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. 375 families identified in the first ever organised survey of organised crime. They didn't pop out of a fucking vacuum. Something created them. Let's go back and look at it, because that gang aspect of it, which is ties into this terrorism thing from it is the breeding pool from it, came out of a product, and if we want to solve it, beating them isn't going to hurt anyone. We need to understand them. So, that's part of what I'm going to be doing when we look at the target system. It's not just about over here there was 3 bullets thrown. No, I want to give you. I want to show you my hometown and show you the crime scene that you need to see to understand what really went happen. The next stage, having done that, we get into the whole, the fallout, the collateral damage, the court cases, the censorship of the court casing, looking at how the press is treating this, looking at who players are saying what, looking at what those players were doing in the weeks beforehand, looking at who's making money out of it, because that's really important understanding this. That's the number one rule always I have followed in my entire investigative journalism career. And people say, oh, you're an investigator, you're a conspiracy theorist. Whatever, guys. The reality is my track record speaks for itself, and the reality is, you want to fucking put names on me, it hurts. I work very hard for what I've done, and I've given up a fucking lot for it, and I'm fucking good at what I do. It sucks to be the guy that's always like, oh, yeah. It really fucking does. You make no money out of the situation. You get, it's at times dangerous. It's incredibly fucking lonely. But I'm good at it, and I'm fucking stupid because I keep fucking. This is what I know, and I think I have something to offer. And I think if you look at what I'm going to take you through, you'll see that I'm going to give you insights. I'm going to show you shit that's going to blow your mind, that about this country, about terrorism. Because you know what? That's really it. This is my thing. Don't ask me to fix your car. Don't fix your toaster, because I'm shit at all that shit. But this is the one thing in the world that I'm actually pretty damn well good at, and I'm going to hopefully, give you guys something that's actually going to have you talking to people and getting passionate and going and doing other people and finding, and hopefully along the way we can actually find some solutions. Because if I'm just giving you problems all the time, I'm not giving you a solution. I'm not adding to I'm just adding to the woes. We've got to find some way to actually disengage this. And again, this is why I'm saying that, this is a counter-terrorism exercise. And it's hard. I have been really, really affected by this. I'm really I've had issues going on in my life which are not unaffected because of the road to where we are. I've had the shit kicked out of me in some ways. But the same things that have had the shit kicked out of me have always in my mind, this thing of like, the only way to deal with terrorism or to deal with any force is to use that force against it, and not to actually buy into it, not to become the victim, not even to become a survivor. It's about recognizing how these things, these terrible long, lonely roads, can actually, if resurfaced properly, it's not the world falling apart, it's just all the world parts falling back into where they need to be. So hopefully we can utilize this to find some ways that we can actually come up with a really good understanding of not just terrorism, but counter-terrorism, and so that we can apply some of these theoretical solutions and with a common sense and practicality. And that's, part of what we're going to be turning around looking. But of course, to understand the solution, you're going to understand the problem. So we're going to walk you through these things, look at what's unfolding, look at what's going to unfold. And that basically is the collateral. And then, of course, from the collateral, we then also have to then turn around and look at things like the lead into the next issue from the domestic front will be, where is this going to shape up the 2020 election? What is this going to do in terms of impact on party demographic voting systems, creating the final outcome that the forces of what we call centralisation want to see. They want to see this party get unsolicited, so that we can say, well, that's what we'll do this. And looking at ways that we can possibly also look at utilising the democratic legal process to claw back some of our really seriously plundered status of our state, because we've been hit hard. We have, don't make no mistake about it. We are at war, people. Really, seriously, and you don't quite get it. But in another 10 years' time, there are going to be people, vast majority, unless you're part of the lucky 5%, you're going to be struggling to fucking pay the rent and not get in trouble, not be part of this big fucking mincing machine that's coming for us, because it feels this is how I must deal with this. So we're going to find ways to really fucking start putting up the tank barriers, and that's where we're at. We're at the stage where they are fucking coming. We're not out to fucking turn around and beat them and destroy them. All we're trying to do at this stage is create something to slow them down, so that we can regroup, develop the people that can necessarily educate us and coach us through the way to we're way back in this game, and that's all we're at the stage is about regrouping. We have been hit hard, and now we're going to come back and figure out where to go from here. And it's not I said I cannot turn around and say this guy turned around and did it. I cannot give you all the answers. I can just give you my knowledge base about, from what I understand, this is how it would resolve this issue, how you respond to it, and then the rest is going to be hefted up to you guys. And that's, this is how it has always been. It has always been a group. If we are going to respond to what is unfolding, which is the centralization of power, we cannot simply turn around and place our authority on some other person and hope some other group will do it for us. We have to do it collectively, together, and respect each other's position and roles in this. We really do. Part of this whole process, what I'm going to be talking about, my sort of theme within the theme, is about the issue of unification. It's. I'll end it with this story. In 1980, Aldo Moro, who was the Prime Minister of Italy at the end of a decade of violence and destabilization, in which there was extreme left and when there was extreme right, and which only 1% of the population were actually making any wealth, was assassinated. And the outcome of this assassination, not at the time when it was blamed on one of these extremist groups, because the media had to have produced you a story that had to be filled within 30 minutes with a beginning, the middle, a good guy and a bad guy, and they all lived happily ever after, which terrorism never works that way. It's very much a generational issue, it's like the abused child thing. But you had this situation in Italy where only a very few people were actually winning, and they were doing everything in their power to make sure the people were really in great strife and at each other's throats. And at the end of it, they discovered that the reason why Aldo Moro was killed by this organisation that had, through many fronts, and again, this is about me, trying to bring some sophistication and understanding terrorism. It's not how the newspapers are, and they really are just quite infantile and puerile when they understand how they paint terrorism. They're just so. The guys that are doing all this stuff running around Christchurch, they are just fucking idiots. Quite frankly, you put me in a room with Sam Sherwood from the Christchurch Press, and that is an open invitation, Sam. If you ever want to sit in a room with me where other people can turn around and see the questions you ask, I'll happily have that conversation with you. And by the end of it, it will be very, very clear how little you know about the subject that you are claiming to report this as, we're doing this on behalf of the people. If you're going to do that, then you better come to the party with a knowledge base. And you better also come to the party with ethics. And so far, Sam Sherwood, I have not seen that from you or your organisation. I have actually seen something. And I, Mr. Sherwood, believe that you need to go and do some very, very hard soul searching, sir. Because what you and your colleagues, like people like Patrick Goh, are doing is disgraceful, and it is not what journalism is about. And there was a time that the people who worked in the Christchurch Press, who were journalists and hang out at Warner's and smoke cigarettes, actually fucking knew that, buddy. They weren't drinking at the OCB, drinking $18 pints and eating 22 burgers, hanging with the beautiful people, while your city has street people sitting there begging for food. Because people like you don't give a shit. This is why what happened in the mosque happened. But you know what happened with tomorrow? Yeah, turned out that he wanted to unify both these people from the extreme left and right. He wanted to build a community. He believed that the best way that everyone could have a fair deal was if everyone pulled together and they learned to work on the principle of not what their differences are, but what their commonhoods are first. And from that, you could create a dialogue. And from that ability to have a dialogue, you could then enter into a process of negotiation where the end result was a win-win in which everybody got a fair deal and no one felt left behind and no one had to get angry and no one had to go and turn around and actually take that violence and that sense of inadequacy and lash out at people, because this is what this is all about at the end of the day. And so instead of running around and trying to make people who are already having a shitty time feel even worse because they are being left behind, you're actually making it even harder. And all you're going to do, mate, is you're going to, what I'm seeing is a newspaper, a police force, and a government that is radicalising people. And they are doing it quite damn deliberately. And I say that, again, because, I trained in this area, people. I used to go down on my weekends to burn, to